Hi, how's it going? This is Resin of Collinwood for YouTube. I'm here to give my review and my thoughts and opinion on a movie directed by John Carpenter, Memoirs or Memories of an Invisible Man, whatever title you want to call it. There's a lot to get into with this movie. I've watched it 3 times. I'm going to read some things from the Wikipedia other than the plot because I do want to get the stuff that went on leading up to this movie and the behind the scenes stuff to help you understand maybe what went wrong with this movie a bit. But there are things that a certain part of this doesn't really add up to. So, Memoirs of an Invisible Man is, I would say, 1992 American comedy drama film directed by John Carpenter. It stars Chevy Chase, Daryl Hannah, Sam Neill, Michael McKean, and Stephen Tobolowsky. The film is loosely based on Memoirs of an Invisible Man, a 1987 novel by H.F. Saint, according to screenwriter William Goldman's book. Which lie did I tell? Question mark. The film was initially developed by director Ivan Reitman. However, this version never came to fruition due to disagreements between Reitman and Chase. The film was a critical and commercial failure. So, look, there's a lot to get into of why that is. It's not. I'm just going to say this up front before I get into the rest of this. Chevy Chase was a prop, especially behind the scenes, and in front of the camera, too. So, production development. In 1986, Harry F. Saint's Memoirs of an Invisible Man was still unfinished when Hollywood agent William Morris gave it to Chevy Chase to read. The actor instantly got interested, which led to a bidding war among studios. Warner Brothers paid $1.35 million for the film rights. William Goldman was assigned to write the screenplay in the mid 1980s, by which time Ivan Reitman was attached to direct. Reitman was attached by the studio. It was Goldman's first screenplay after what he called his leper period, when he was in non-demand to write scripts. He attributes his comeback to being represented by CAA. The project was largely a vanity project shepherded by Chase through the studio. The film is billed as a Cornelius production. Cornelius is Chevy Chase's real first name. He wanted to make a film about the loneliness of he being Chevy Chase wanted to make a film about the loneliness of invisibility, intending to the film to be a bridge into less comedic roles. To sum that up, Chevy Chase was wanting more serious roles. Goldman did 3 drafts of the script, and Warner Brothers was prepared to greenlight the film. However, Chase was unhappy with the script. That's not good. Reitman wanted to proceed with the script, but the studio backed Chase and Reitman left the project. Wow. Sorry. Like I said, there's issues. Goldman also left the project, so you have the director and the writer leaving the project. That's always a good sign. It's not really. Um, he left it saying, "I'm too old and too rich for this shit." He later said that Mark Canton, head of the studio, did not pay the writer for all his work, causing Goldman to initiate a lawsuit against them. Wow. Chase found Goldman's script too comedic. So this is Chase's reason why he didn't like the script, according to this. Clark Griswold becoming invisible. That's what Chevy Chase described it as, and he sought screenwriters to rework it, reportedly to do something more serious with more adventure, eventually approaching Dana Olson and Robert Collector. Richard Donner was attached to direct for 8 months due to his experience with visual effects. So initially, Richard Donner was attached. after the first or after Reitman left for 8 months. Again, because of visual effects. Something that made various potential directors turn down the project. Eventually, someone suggested John Carpenter, and Chase approved the idea. This to me just screams insanity for our buddy John Carpenter, because you're walking into what sounds like a pretty bad situation. Carpenter was then embroiled in a legal dispute with They Live production company Alive Films regarding his contract. He had several projects fall through. A film with Cher called Pincushion, Exorcist 3, and a version of Dracula. He was reluctant to make memoirs at first. When you have lots of money and lots of time, it's really grueling. I enjoy being an independent, and it's not possible to be one in this situation. But when I thought, why not? I hadn't turned down a movie for a long time. The actor had to convince Warner Brothers that Carpenter, whom they still saw as a horror director, could work well for this picture. I'm going to get into that with this video. Um, so, writing. Carpenter actually spent 8 months working along with Olson and Collector to make the script Aiken to North by Northwest meets Starman, developing the love story to give the protagonist Nick a stronger motivation in escaping the villains. During the period, Chase lost 20 pounds. Knowing that production and ethics work would be physically demanding. What we tried to do with the memoirs is to show his character going through changes. I'm gonna say Carpenter. Chevy didn't want to just play somebody like Clark Griswold from the Vacation movies who never changes. It's not about the kind of situation where Claude Rains become invisible and went nuts, nor is it about a wacky guy who's invisible and looks up girls' skirts throughout the movie, said Chase. It's mostly about the parallel of being invisible, not the fun or joy of it. So filming lasted 84 days between April and June of 1991. Parts of the film were shot in Snowbird, Utah. Carpenter said that due to the effects work by Industrial Light and Magic, we eventually had to shoot the same movie twice. As after normal takes, the effects team would set up their bulky VistaVision motion control cameras to film the same elements again while gathering digital data for the computer generated imagery. According to visual effects supervisor Bruce Nicholson, success in this movie was showing invisibility in detail. During 9 months of preparation, Nicholson studied four previous films on this subject: The Invisible Man, which receives a homage in the scene where Nick is shown to have his head wrapped in bandages and wearing large dark goggles. Its sequel, The Invisible Man Returns, Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, and Ghost. Chase wore a blue bodysuit below his clothing so that computer artists could erase his body through chroma key and match the clothes with computer generated replicas so that inside the clothing I gotta sneeze. Oh, where was I? Uh, yeah. Let's see. Chroma key computer generate replicas so that even the inside of the clothing could be seen, along with other touches such as erasing the shadow made by Chase's body. A particular elaborate effect had Nick's invisible face being covered in flesh colored makeup. That's actually in the movie, the flesh colored makeup sequences. The makeup was applied to Chase as his head was covered in viscous blue cosmetic. tongue and teeth coated with blue food coloring, and the corona of each eye covered with blue contact lenses, an uncomfortable makeover made worse by the June heat and heavy studio lighting. An alternate ending was filmed showing Alice giving birth to an invisible child. Carpenter later stated that this ending was cut because Warner Brothers was worried that the audience would react to the invisible baby as if it were a freak. An unfortunate and innocent diabolical child. Warner Brothers is in the business of making audience friendly, non challenging movies. I was aware of this when I signed on to the film, so I guess I shouldn't complain. Still, we could have released a somewhat stronger version of the picture. Even Carpenter says saying this movie wasn't good, but it was a big studio film, and it suffered from what a lot of studio movies suffer from: the audience preview process. When you cut every high point and low point and make it very bland, and yeah, there is that. Carpenter would go on to say that the production of the film was very troubling and vigorous, while also battling studio execs. Carpenter claimed Chase and Hannah were the stuff of nightmares and impossible to direct. In particular, Chase would often refuse to wear his special effects makeup and would remove it prematurely, ruining a day's worth of filming. Holy shit, that's not good. So there were a lot of issues with this movie, but I do want to get into the in front of the camera stuff too. And what I feel is a lot of this movie's problem. Number one, this is based on a book, as I read. I actually found that out a couple nights ago when we before we recorded the Dark Shadows video. I was talking to Gordon, my buddy Gordon Amowski, and Patrick, and Gordon was telling me that they really did not make they didn't really make a lot of the book. You know, they should have more went off the book. The book is about a spy who gets turned invisible. Here's the thing: Sam Neill's character actually plays a spy or CIA agent, if you will, whatever you want to call him, in this movie. And he's supposed to be your heel, if you will, your villain. Um, there is a lot of problems with this movie. I've talked about the behind the scenes, but here's my biggest issue. I just want to know from a direction, how busy was Carpenter fighting with studio execs? Because there's a lot of seems to be a lot of mistakes by him here too. And what I mean by that is the stakes in this movie are very, very low. They don't seem very high to a degree. Sam Neill's character is too busy negotiating with Chevy Chase's character. Now, again, I've said this. I said this to Gordon. I would not have cast Chevy Chase in this movie at all. I know he, I know he read this, wanted to play the part. And what really kills this movie too is the narration of it. The whole here's the stakes of this movie. So Sam Neill's character, who already has proven he'll kill somebody, he's killed the doctor. He's killed a doctor in this movie. He's suspected of killing other people because he's a spy. Like I said, he works for the CIA. So when they capture Alice, played by Daryl Hannah, you think, holy shit, the stakes just got raised, right? Because this dude's a killer and he has no problem pulling the trigger. I get cause and effect. I get less is more. I really do. Number one, you never actually see him kill anybody, though on screen. You see them knock out people with like knockout darts. The big issue, the big issue I have here is Sam Neill's character, who's supposed to be this big heavy heel, and he wants Chevy Chase's character to work for him in a partnership of him killing people. Basically, he wants Chevy Chase's character Nick Calloway to kill people for not necessarily the agency, but him. He's out for himself. Okay, that's what makes that's what's supposed to make Sam Neill's character, you know, unpredictable. But the problem is, it makes him too predictable. I'm going to get into what I feel this film should have been and some of the things I did enjoy. Here's what I enjoyed before I continue with my summation. I enjoyed Chevy Chase and Daryl Hannah's chemistry. I get what John Carpenter's saying, that they weren't easy to direct. Again, it's called act. Something Enzel Farage told me. It's called acting, that two people can get along despite whatever. And I get that. My biggest issue with this movie, though, is I've talked about Sam Neill being this heavy heel. He doesn't feel like a heel at times in this movie. Again, he's too busy. Look, the problem with this movie is you have no character is stupid, so stupid that they don't realize who they're dealing with. Like, you can't be so blind as a character that you don't know the character you're going after. What I mean is, Sam Neill keeps trying to convince Nick Holloway, "Oh, you come join us, come join us." That's not gonna happen, and you could tell that. The audience can tell that. Anybody with a pulse can tell that. This is sort of my problem with the direction of this movie done by Carpenter too. That, again, it's not. I want to be clear. It's not a horror movie, and John Carpenter and Chevy Chase is right. The making say it's not The Invisible Man. Here's the problem. There's a shot in this movie that John Carpenter does, that he's trying to build this fake suspense where Daryl Hannah has been called by Nick Holloway to come to a house down the beach because she's staying at a beach house with Nick's friends. So he says, "Come down the beach a ways. I'm staying at this empty house." And John Carpenter shoots the scene very sort of suspenseful. He doesn't play this suspenseful music, but the way Daryl Hannah's character stops, she's acting like she's unsure. Again, very suspenseful. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Are you trying to like build suspense where I know Nick Holloway's not going to kill this woman or hurt this woman at all? I get the point that she hasn't seen Nick Holloway, that there's news about Nick Holloway doing some shady shit. And I get she didn't really know no Nick. I get all that. But you're trying to convince an audience who's too aware of the character too. And I feel that there's just a smack in the audience's face. I don't know what Carpenter was thinking here, and I think it's not great direction by a great director. And you could say, well, maybe this was the time Daryl Hannah was being difficult. I don't know, but it just seems so weird that that scene, the way they shoot that, is in that movie. It makes no sense to a degree that you're trying to convince. It's one thing for the character to be sort of okay. Nick being a fugitive is weird, you know, but to try to convince an audience who already knows what Nick Calloway is, he's just a victim in a sense, it's just stupid. Also, too, with this movie, is Chevy Chase's performance bad? I talked about stakes a bit, and I sort of got away from it. The stakes is Chevy Chase's character is recording a videotape of himself as the Invisible Man, and he sends it out publicly to the press. That he doesn't take any chances with with Sam Neill's character. Even though the most they tried to do was capture him. And even Sam Neill's character doesn't try to shoot him enough times to want to kill him on top of the building, the climax sequence. The biggest problem with this movie, you have a lot of MacGuffins and no real heals. You don't have a real heal. That's another problem with this movie. Sam Neill's character, you could say he's heelish. I don't know. I don't see enough of that out of him. An off-screen kill that's like that's out of the blue. He's suspected of killing people in this country, that country. I get all that, but you need to show me some maliciousness from Sam Neill, who can be a sadistic, who's played in The Omen 3 and been sadistic. I mean, he knows how to play evil. That's what gets me. Like, he's a very talented actor, and it just feels like there's not a lot of great character development follow through. What I would have, I'll get into what I would have loved to see here in a second. So he sends, Chevy Chase's character, Nick Holloway, sends that meeting and sends that tape. He tricks, he, oh God, Sam Neill's character says, I'll exchange Alice for you. Here's the beautiful part. And beautiful, I mean sarcastic. Richard Epcar's character, one of my favorite voice actors, is in this movie. You get to see him too, which is cool. Richard Epcar, who very talented dude, puts Daryl Hannah's character Alice in the back of the taxi. The person driving the taxi is the Invisible Man. He's got this made. They talked about the makeup stuff that they use. He's got makeup on his face and stuff, so no one knows it's him. Um, it's just it's just a really really lame film, and it is lame from start to finish. This is not a great movie, and John Carpenter should have told them no. He should have said no because I think Richard Donner saw the mess too. I think Richard Donner secretly saw the mess too. Um, again, there were a lot of problems before Donner and then later Carpenter was brought on, so there was problems going into this movie. Um, my biggest, again, I've talked about my biggest issue. It doesn't feel like the stakes are very low key, and there should have been more stakes to this movie. Here's what they should have did. So I wouldn't, again, you can't, you're going to get a lawsuit from Chevy Chase if you cut him out. I really don't care. I would have not put Chevy Chase in this movie. I would not have booked it that way. Um, I would have kept the spy angle from the book. I haven't read the book, but I would have kept that angle in this movie. But here's here's the little plot twist at the beginning. The spy isn't necessarily Sam Neill's character. They want this cold-blooded evil spy, this cold-blooded spy to be invisible so he can kill even more efficient than he already does, and he's a cold-blooded killer. You know who I would have had do that? You know who I would have set that up for? Richard Epcar, who can act. I That's who I would have had be the villain in this movie. But my scientist in this movie, played by Sam Neill, was reluctant. So they only have one shot to turn somebody invisible. He uses it on himself when no one else is in the room. And then by the time everybody realizes what happens, he's already snuck out. Richard Epcar's character tries to find him. He's assigned a group of people like in the movie, but even Richard Epcar's character is such a cold blooded killer, he starts killing his own men. He tells Sam Neill's character, I'm going to kill you. The moment I find you, I am going to kill you. This isn't, again, the stakes should be about a cold blooded killer. I felt that's what this movie should have been, and you could have had better stakes. Sam Neill's character in this movie does not. They build him as a cold blooded killer, but the problem is he's too busy negotiating to be that cold blooded son of a bitch that they're trying to portray him as. And that's a problem within this movie. I mean, you can go look, the movie's free on Tubi, and for a reason. It's because it's complete dog shit. I like some of the actors in the movie. Again, I love Sam Neill. I love Daryl Hannah's great, and I love me some Richard Epcar. But there's a lot of issues with this movie, and they just don't. The stakes are so weak. And again, there's too many MacGuffins. Everybody's trying to just move the story along. And again, why would you want to negotiate with somebody who you know is not going to be a killer? And you can say that, well, maybe the negotiations are false. No, Sam Neill's character is dead serious when he went, oh, I want you to come work for me. That's not this guy. That's, like, come on, you're not this gullible or stupid. No, come on. And him keeping to try to sell that point, and you got to realize Nick Holloway's not that stupid either. It just makes no sense. It feels like a constant confliction between the characters. It's just stupid. This is not a movie I enjoyed. I wish I could say I did. I watched it 3 times to sort of study the film, and it's just like, what the hell happened here? And honestly, what part of what happened was Chevy Chase, number one. Number two, the studio Reitman, wanted to make this, more, I guess, more comedy from what I just read. If I know I'm bringing John Carpenter again, Warner Brothers is not somebody that makes horror movies, and it's like, okay, I get all that, but you're bringing John Carpenter on board. If why not? When somebody suggesting John Carpenter and you had Richard Donner in mind, you should have maybe kept Richard Donner. But here's the thing. Though Donner doesn't make horror, he has horror elements in some of his action movies. So, Lethal Weapon, anybody? um, Superman 2 is pretty, there's some scary moments in it. But when you're bringing John Carpenter on board, John Carpenter spent 8 months reworking the script to what it was. And it's just like, even reworking the script didn't really do anything because Chevy Chase, number one, was not a great choice. But the studio should have said, Chevy, we'll just buy the rights from you. We'll pay you, yada, yada, yada. We don't really want you in this movie. But, Chevy Chase is considered a star, so, you're not going to tell him that. Warner Brothers did not get a return on investment on this one. Um, I can't sit here and say if the film will ever be remade. I don't know who owns. I don't know if Warner Brothers even still owns the rights. I'm not sure. But from start to finish, this movie is a constant mess. And some parts are just unbelievable. Another part is the scientist who was working on the experiment, the invisible experiment. He says, and I kid you not, this is a line in this movie. We didn't even know what we were really working on. How the did you not know what you were really working on? Like, somebody had to invent it for you to work on it. Like, that makes no sense. And you could say, well, maybe the person never told them they still had to mix the formula and give it to him, didn't they? Like it just none of it makes sense, and that's a big problem with this movie too. It's just a large overall problem from start to finish, and maybe one day we'll get a good movie. They'll redo this movie and it'll be done good. Um, but I do think a lot of the issues of this, number one, you know, Chevy Chase, obviously, and it sounded like he was a problem behind the scenes too. Um, and I just think, when you brought John Carpenter aboard, you should have really thought about, because he doesn't. He said he spent 8 months with the writers working the script. The problem is, you're telling this. Daryl Hannah and Chevy Chase had a natural chemistry. That is a point that gets across in the movie. They talk about in the they talk. John Carpenter was talking about they were wanting to build a relationship that he wanted to run away and get away from the people who tried to kill him because he wanted to be with her. Yes, he wants to be with her, but also these two barely know each other. Yeah, they have good chemistry. And when he becomes invisible, yeah, he thinks about going to her, but he soon realizes how big of a mistake that would be. He doesn't want to involve a woman he just met in on it. But when he sees her again, when he runs away, his thoughts aren't of her. His thoughts of, I just got to get away from these people, go somewhere they won't suspect. And when he sees the girl at his friend's beach house with them, he can't help but be in love with her all over again because he was very much attracted to her when he saw her. They were kissing in the bar restaurant thing, the club thing, um, and and again, you great chemistry between actor and actress. I'm taking nothing away from them there, but a lot of this movie's issues is just, again, no real heavy stakes in the movie, and I've talked about there was the Sam Neill's character apparently kills a doctor. Okay, so we don't bat an eye at a doctor, but we're gonna bat an eye at not plugging the girlfriend. It is an issue I have heavy issues with when you're trying to present a character who's clearly a heel, but you're not really treating him like the heaviest of heels at times. And I don't think it's necessary. Again, I don't believe this is Sam Neill phoning this in. I don't want to. It could be, but God, is it just. Look, if you want to watch the movie, it's on Tubi. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, again, there are some decent things about it, but 4 out of 10 for me for this movie. I wish I could have gave. Look. I wanted to give this movie a good review. I wanted to like it. The words and when I hear the words "Invisible Man" in the title, I definitely want to watch a movie that's going to be entertaining. And this is too much. There's not enough heavy stakes in this movie to make it entertaining. And it should have been a great movie, and it did not turn out that way, unfortunately. And I do think there's a lot of blame to go around. But that's just my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of this interesting movie.